Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now, guys? We are here, it is Derby week, and we are getting set here on the Celts are here channel with all things Celtic leading up to the Derby game. Of course, we are here for a bit of a special podcast episode. We've got Anthony Joseph rejoining us from Sky Sports. Anthony, it's been great. It's great to see you, mate. Hail, hail.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. Always a pleasure. Pleasure to be on. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good, Anthony. And it's been a very long season for Celtic on the pitch and off the pitch. You know, from the terraces to the boardroom, and the transfer department and everything else in between. You know, so we had you on earlier this season, or might have been even just the back end of last year. But there's been so much going on, and it's great to have you back on, mate. So thanks again for rejoining us for this one.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's been quite a season, and I think the sort of Champions League journey's helped that as well, and the longevity of the new format of the Champions League. It's made it feel like we are coming towards what feels like the end of the season. So yeah, busy transfer windows both in the summer and also in January as well. And yeah, it's good to sort of be at the sort of tail end of the season where titles are being won and fought for, and cups are being won as well. So yeah, excited for the run into the end of the season.
Yeah, because there has been a bit of a different rhythm and beat to the season, hasn't there? Because the January window actually ended in February, really, didn't it? And Champions League group stage ended in January, February kind of time as well. So it's been yeah, there's been a different kind of accent across the season in that way, hasn't it? We had that ultra marathon period across the festive year, that the festive period that Brendan spoke about. We're playing matches every 2 or 3 days in all competitions, and yeah, it feels like now it's like very quickly. Like, this is business end. This is when everything's being decided, trebles and titles and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's been action packed. And in terms of the January window as well, from yourself, I suppose, and what you get up to, how was it this January? It was obviously quite different, and in terms of teams playing much later in the window, maybe reserving some business till the end, as well as the difference in the deadline and whatever.
Yeah, it was an interesting window actually. It was a bit different. Obviously, it was going a few days into February as well, which made it a bit different. So it was a longer January window. But yeah, in terms, it was just as busy as ever. It's just constant. I mean, I very rarely get a minute's rest during any transfer window, but especially in January when it's just a month to do business. And I remember the last week working 16 to 20-hour days, and deadline day is always busy, but you feed off the adrenaline of deadline day, and there was a bit of excitement as well in deadline day, and involving Celtic with getting a deal that wasn't really in the pipeline the day before or anything like that. So yeah, in terms of Celtic, it was a bit different because of the Champions League, and a lot was riding on whether they qualified for the latter stages of the Champions League. And that delayed business. It certainly delayed, for example, Kyogo going, which Ren were looking to do a lot earlier in January, but Celtic were not prepared to let him go before unless they'd got over the line. And I think they thought they would also get someone in, and they missed out on Fiskard and Iheanacho as well, where there was tentative early stage talks there. But it is what it is. They tried to go for another striker and replace him, and I do feel they left themselves a bit short, especially going into the that playoff tie with Bayern Munich. But I don't think we really saw that much. I'm not even sure Kyogo would have made too much of a difference over those 2 legs and against Bayern Munich. Maybe in the first leg, but certainly second leg, Celtic were brilliant over in Munich, and had the team that started was perfect for that game. And yeah, it's just the way it goes sometimes. And sometimes you get your business done. Sometimes you can get your targets, but the main thing is, and I think it has to be sort of applauded at times, is yes, maybe you won't sign someone for that position you want, but you don't want to just sign anyone. Do you know what I mean? You don't want to just go and maybe spend £4 or £5 million on a player that wasn't your it wasn't one of your main targets just to make up the numbers, just to bring someone in. I think you might start seeing Celtic in the summer maybe push for Garden again, and perhaps have identified further targets. So it's just the way it goes sometimes, and they did leave themselves a bit short, but it's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of lessons learned from this one because, like you say, they're waiting for that young boys game. We need to guarantee progression before we push the trigger on one or two going out, one or two coming in, and yeah, like it's a bit frustrating to be coming out of the window a little bit short. But like you say, with some of the, especially with a permanent transfer like this, like I'm getting reminded of that old Christmas advert, a puppies for life, not just for Christmas. It's that kind of, a new striker is not just for the January transfer window, it's for a 5-year contract or whatever they get, so it's definitely not something to rush into. I'm with you on the way on that. But there's maybe just a wee bit of lessons learned perhaps internally of how they maybe need to firm that up a bit better for next year. Because it certainly seemed if you did qualify and then push some buttons, pull some levers, and Kyogo leaves, Jota and somebody else comes in, and everything would have been dead smooth. Like that's kind of what I think everyone would have thought would have been the best way to go about it. I don't think Celtic would have been any different. But like you say, they've maybe just been caught with maybe another bidder coming in or terms changing or something like that. So yeah, not terrible, all things considered. But it does feel as well when they know that like it's not really the full January window because we're waiting for that young boys game to come. So that means you've only actually got like 10 days at the back. It's just lining up all those dominoes and trying to look after it a bit better. So yeah, interesting to hear your point of view on that one as well. Maybe Fitzgarden might not be gone or Iheanacho again, because that was links that kind of came and went. People weren't too sure how much was there and some other bits and bobs. But yeah, coming off the back of the Champions League campaign, one of the main things that's kind of been keeping the temperature in Glasgow quite high anyway has been a lot of the drama we've seen from the other side of the river, as it were. And leading into this derby match, like it feels like it's the third meeting we've got of the season, and it feels like it's probably the most interesting one of the season so far. I know the League Cup final was like the cup final, but this one, because of all the stuff that's really gone on over the last couple of weeks, again, maybe some takeover rumours and whatever else has been going on over there, this one's got an extra kind of level of interest in it, an extra level of spice added into the equation as well. There is going to be the most significant away support we've seen in recent years as well. And although there's not as much riding on this game as there was early season domestically, the points been more valuable in theory or in a cup final, this one feels kind of the most important all of a sudden for me. How are you feeling coming into this one yourself, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, quite calm about it so far. But give me another couple of days. I'm not sure exactly when this is going to go out, but yeah, certainly 24 hours or 48 hours before, I will be feeling it and feeling the nerves. And I hate trying to predict a game or predict a derby score or whatever. So I hope you're not going to ask me prediction. But yeah, it's. The next one is always the most important one, and I know that's a cliche, but that is true. There is a lot riding on this in terms of when the league title will be won. I'm not sure, like if Rangers get a point or if somehow they win the game, it's not going to stop Celtic from winning the title, and it's only going to probably enhance Barry Ferguson's reputation, especially if they get through in the Europa League and having beaten Fenerbahce away. So it's I don't know how to sort of feel about it. If Celtic get the win, they're just two matches away from the title. That's going to keep the excitement going, knowing that you're just a couple of weeks away from clinching it. Especially St Johnstone have already announced that they're hosting Celtic's title party with 3 stands at McDermott Park. So it would be a shame not to allow St Johnstone to have the title party that they're hosting. But yeah, in terms of the match, I think what we've seen already, Celtic at home were so dominant, so comfortable in the 3-0 one earlier last year in September, just after the summer transfer window. What we saw in the cup final was two teams just going at it. Celtic were really poor in the first half, but certainly in the second half, both teams just going at it at each other, and that was quite that was quite refreshing to see, and it was, I guess, for any neutral, and I know many neutrals who watch the game, certainly at my work down here in London, many people just saying, "What a game! What a tie!" Just it's great to see both teams going at each other like that. And I was like, well, wasn't great for the nerves when it goes down to penalty shootouts. So, and then Celtic are have been so far ahead in the league for some time that even when Rangers beat Celtic 3-0 at Ibrox, it was, as much as you can be annoyed about that as a fan and be frustrated with how Celtic just didn't turn up, all the big players, the senior players didn't really turn up or get a grip of the game at all. Celtic were never in it. And well, I think actually maybe the first 2 minutes they were in it, Celtic had like corner after corner, and then suddenly the performance just dropped. But what I think the difference with that game was that Celtic are so far ahead. It was almost felt like they were going through that period of just coming out at the end of the festive fixtures and maybe a bit tired. It's also a Thursday night, wasn't it? So we all know that Rangers can only turn up on Thursday night. So there was that factor in it as well. But it'll be interesting, and I think it's good that fans are back. Away allocation are back. I think anyone who was at the game last Sunday against Hibs with 7,000 Hibs fans there, what used to be the old Rangers allocation as well. Exactly the same spot. I think Celtic very much were making a point there as well, of look what it could be like. But it enhanced the atmosphere last week. I think anyone who was at that game was saying that having a big decent away allocation enhance the atmosphere from a home perspective as well. And because fans feed off each other in moments of matches. I mean, the team can be going through a bad patch or a rough spell in the game, and the away fans are all up getting excited with the way their team's playing. And often you would, if there's not a huge away allocation, the fans would get on the home team's back. Your Celtic fans would be on the backs of the team. Whereas if there's a big away allocation and you see the away fans getting excited, you want to roar on your team. I think that's just a natural instinct as a football fan. So I think fans will feed off each other. I think it'll be a better atmosphere than we've maybe had in the last few games at Celtic Park against Rangers, and it'll be decent. It's always exciting looking ahead to derby games, and with the title so close to being clinched, it's going to be exciting. Yeah, it's going to be important.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great having all the extra fans back in. I was at the game last weekend with all the Hibs fans in, and they definitely made it a much more interesting game from like the outset, and even in the build up to it, just knowing they were all going to be there, Hibs in the form they were in. It was a real great kind of throwback situation. Sadly, I don't think the Hibs team on the pitch really backed up the support they were getting, sadly for them. But even with Rangers coming in with that kind of 2,500, just like probably just right in the corner, without spreading out into stands and whatever, it is going to add an extra little bit into it, because it is very much like fight fire with fire when it comes from the terraces, isn't it? If you start hearing them singing all their nonsense, the first thing that everyone else in the stadium wants to do obviously is just drown that out in the best way possible. So that's definitely going to add something into it. I also do think Barry Ferguson coming into this as Rangers manager, let's see, the point of recording this is Wednesday, so let's see what happens on Thursday. You maybe need to reserve a bit of judgment on how they've done in that tie until it's actually been played, I suppose. But it's a weird one, this appointment, because it's kind of like it's Barry Ferguson, Billy Dodds, and Neil McCann mainly taking the headlines, and like I get all the tropes around it, like it's just the boys, and it's and again, some of the names that have came out have been incredible. Like Ned Lasso is my favourite one, I think. But like, it is a pretty good result they got against Fenerbahce. And see, to be honest with you, when I seen the team and how they'd laid out, like tactically, like I don't know who gets the credit for it in that backroom staff, but it's nothing like Rangers have ever lined up before. Like it's very much a hard left turn. So but it's hard to say before Thursday entirely. But they're a bit of an unknown quantity a little bit, aren't they? Like how they'll turn up and how they'll try and attack.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be. It's not like Philippe Clement side that you sort of Rodgers has gone toe to toe with them many times. So we'd have sussed they sussed each other out a bit as well. That cup final they went to, it was quite a thrilling encounter tactically as well. But it's going to be, yeah, even in Barry Ferguson's first game against Kilmarnock, I know you set yourself up differently in Europe, and that's the wise thing to do. But against Killie and against Motherwell, they were completely different to how they were against Fenerbahce, and I guess that's understandable. But against, I think we will see, and again, we're recording this before the Fenerbahce home game, but as things stand, and if they are successful again and progressing, which I think they will be against Fenerbahce, I think we'll see a similar type of setup from Ferguson again at Celtic Park, because what they did was they allowed the other team to sort of dominate the ball, and they just were ruthless on the counter. Well, actually, were they ruthless on the counter? They had a few more chances to win the game. I know there was a couple of offsides, but yeah, they had other chances to score. But they were clinical in terms of winning the match. They won 3-1 with about 30% possession, less shots. Their XG was less as well than Fenerbahce's. But it's that's a brilliant sort of kind of smashing grab. Well, even. Yeah, it was sort of smash and grab, wasn't it? As in, like, they were hitting them on the counter attack.
Yeah.
It's just that they managed to do it 3 times. So it was. I think we'll see a similar setup like that, but I think they'll also be in Celtic's faces a bit more because it's a derby game. I also don't think Celtic will allow Rangers that much space like Fenerbahce. I think Fenerbahce underestimated Rangers a little bit, saw this team in turmoil. Sort of rookie manager who's only managed in the lower leagues of Scotland, that kind of thing. I think that was what they were thinking. This is a team in crisis. This is we just need to turn up. I think that's what they felt. And Rangers do have some players that can hurt you on their day, and if they're in the right mood, the mentality has been Rangers' biggest problem for a number of years. They've always, I mean, we've seen it over the Europa League. When they're not expected to do something, they can, and they've got a bit of freedom and less pressure on them, they seem to do okay and have had some amazing results in Europe. But if the pressure is on them and they're expected to do something, then they don't often do it, and sometimes they even just crumble. So, like, I've no doubts if the title race on January the 2nd was like 1 point or 3 points, even just 6 points, there's no chance Rangers are winning that 3-0.
Yeah,
it would be a completely different type of game. And the fans would have been on their backs a bit more. It would have, especially in that first couple of minutes, if Celtic were getting corner after corner, it would have been a real pressure match, which I just don't feel like the current crop of Rangers players are good at coping with. And I feel there's a huge body of evidence over a few years to suggest that. And I feel that's why they also do okay in the Europa League, because they don't have that expectancy. So I think it'll be quite similar, but like you say, it's an unknown quantity. All Rodgers can do and all Celtic can do is focus on themselves. They are a better team individually throughout the whole squad, pretty much. Certainly throughout the whole starting 11. You would not put any Rangers player in that Celtic starting 11 as things stand, and it's been like that for a couple of years, I think. And so if Celtic can just focus on themselves, they need sort of a bit more of a lift, like you were talking about after the Champions League ended for Celtic after that heartbreak in Munich. You sort of saw in the next couple of games that the form dipped a little bit. They certainly performance dipped a little bit against Hibs. They weren't really at the races. Against St Mirren, that first half they weren't great until they started getting their late flurry of goals. So the the quarterfinal was good, and I think the Hibs having 7,000 helped make it a proper cup tie and lift the performance. And they just managed the game well without really getting out of third gear, maybe. But what you want to see is on Sunday is Celtic from a couple of months ago, Celtic from like 3-4 months ago, where they were in the form of their lives, like against like Leipzig, and also putting past Rangers as well. So that's the kind of performance you want to see. You want Celtic really going for it. You want them to from the get go, and I think that's what you will see. And and that's all they can do. They can only focus on themselves. I don't think they should worry too much about what kind of Rangers team is going to come at them, and especially if Rangers turn up like they did against Fenerbahce, allowing the opposition to dominate the ball. If Celtic can turn it over quicker than Fenerbahce were doing and be more clinical than Fenerbahce, then they'll have no problems of winning that game quite comfortably.
Yeah, it's a risky strategy, that, going to Celtic Park and letting Celtic have the ball. I think, like you say, their natural instincts will probably kick on to be a bit more confrontational across the pitch and maybe not totally sit in. I'm with you all the way on that one. And I think, like you say there, it's about focusing on ourselves and coming out of the Champions League. Like Brendan Rodgers has been kind of priming the team constantly for Champions League games, like making sure the rotation's right, making sure the form's coming in for Bruges, for this game, for that game. And then after the Munich match, it's just like that kind of deflate, that decompress situation where it's like, right, that kind of ultra marathon is finished. And then it's now it feels like, what was he priming the squad for last time? Probably Hibs. And then thereafter, maybe coming into this one. And when you think about all the kind of management of the squad throughout the season and the kind of focusing on your own stuff kind of thing, the number one player that I think springs to mind at the moment is Arne Engels across the season. Big money signing, record signing, first season at the club, and he's been a guy that's just been like focusing on his own game. Brendan Rodgers has been focusing really hard on it, especially now that we're really through the season. If you kind of zoom out and you look at Engels, there's a very clear pattern on like 2 subs, 1 start, 2 starts, 1 sub, this kind of thing across the year. And it feels like he is just like right in the ascendancy right now. And coming into a match like this where it is going man for man all across the pitch and transitions and turnovers, Arne Engels is probably coming right into his game right at the right time of the year for this.
He is, and I think he was very unfairly criticised by some sections of the support quite early on in his Celtic career. And it's really, you've got to take the price tag out of this, because this is Celtic's sort of operating model now. Their finances are to a level where they will spend £8-9 million. They spent £8 million on Jota. They spent £9 million and 9.5 million on Ida, and 11 on Engels. Yes, Engels is Celtic's record signing, but I'm sure that will be broken at some point over the next couple of years as well. It's just where Celtic are operating at a different level on the market now. They're not looking for, I mean, they will still always look at, if you can get someone in for 2 million that you can develop and then sell on, they're not going to turn their noses up at that. But they are totally. Certainly you can see that there is a bit more of a Champions League European mentality in how they're signing players. It's no longer just being seen as a bonus, the Champions League. It's very much, if you're getting 10 games in the Champions League, that is a 50-year season. So you've got to see it as a big priority. And you already see that for how they're preparing for next season. I mean, they've got Kieran Tierney coming in, a top left back in his prime. And the only thing that is sort of stopping him from being playing regularly in the Premier League and Champions League with Arsenal is sort of his injuries, and that have held him back. And so Celtic that's going to be a great signing in the summer, and shows the sort of, it lays down a marker as well of when Celtic go to buy other players in the summer and say, well, look, we're bringing in Kieran Tierney. He's a top class left back. He's coming here. Come and join the sort of build here. What we're looking to do in the Champions League. So yeah, Engels is even though he's £11 million, he's such a young player and he's still a project. Do you know what I mean? It's not like Celtic still have to develop him. Engels saw his future. Ironically, Rennes were looking at signing him in the summer as well, but he was always wanting it to be Celtic, and it was all about if Celtic could agree a fee with Augsburg, and eventually they did. So it's with Engels. What I was going back to the point is that the only reason he was getting criticism, in my opinion, is because he cost £11 million. And whereas if say we didn't know the fee, we just saw this player come in, say it was undisclosed and nobody knew it from any sources or anything like that. It was an undisclosed fee. Get this player in, put in a couple of good performances. A Bratislava game, he was brilliant against Bratislava. You'd sort of see, oh, there's a player here. If just let Rodgers have a season with him, develop him, because Rodgers is so good at that kind of player development, and we're seeing it. We've seen it with so many players already: Matt O'Reilly, Alistair Johnston, and Daizen Maida, of course, who is playing like one of the best players in the world at the moment. And I mentioned it on Twitter as well. Yang, we're seeing a lot of progression with Yang. So just let Rodgers do what he does best, which is develop players. And if we didn't know Arne Engels' fee, I think 100% of this support would be like, Engels is going to be some player. But it's because we know the fee is 11 million. And he's our record signing. That's the only thing that holds him back, I think, in terms of people's opinions of him. Whereas, but what you're saying, his performances are going on an upward trajectory, and we are seeing his qualities. He's not that kind of attacking midfielder number 10 that is going to be scoring goals all over the pitch in open play. Yes, he takes all our penalties, but he's a very good midfield player that could turn into a superstar if he continues his progression, and may end up being a top sale as well. So it's in a few years' time. So it's with Engels, I think it's just, and I think most fans are coming round to it now. But I think there were a good few months ago, there were people like, "Oh, Engels that was not worth that." Do you know what I mean? It's like, and I think everyone just needed to just let Rodgers continue doing what he's doing, and there's still so much more progression to be had. And I think it's a lot of pressure on a young lad because everyone knows his fee.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up there, and I think of course everyone's aware like the fee definitely is like flavour and a lot of opinions with it, but I never really thought about it in terms of like actually walking through. Imagine it was completely undisclosed, nobody had any idea. Everyone would have probably, I'm not too sure there is criticism, but I think the main thing, like you kind of touched on there, is when people see the fee, they just expect it to be someone that, for spending a record sum, then they better be able to do 10 step overs and be better than Matt O'Reilly, or be better than like this guy or that guy, and you're expecting like ready-made, walks in the door from game one. Oh, wow, that's why the club spent. But that's not really the way the world works with football these days,
No.
Especially for a guy at his age. Like, I think if we bought a guy that was 30 for that amount of money, you'd probably get somebody that would, from match day, from the first time you play them, you would know exactly who they are and what they're about. But yeah, so it's a wee bit of mixed
and
perceptions for people listening to it.
Look who the number one target was for the striker position, Fiskardin, and that's going to be 10 million plus.
Yeah,
and he's not the finished article. He's not a top striker in the world. He is doing well in his league. Celtic will sign projects at 8, 9 million, 10 million, because it's the level they're operating. It's just that they're just at a different stage of their project. If you know what I mean. Celtic used to sign them Celtic used to sign raw players who were really raw and try and develop them into players that they could sell on. But due to the finances now, and due to the progression they've made in Europe and the new Champions League format, the benefits of that, it's become a bit more of a leveler. But I think you guys had someone on speaking about the potential revenues that Celtic could have by the end of the season, and they're projecting nearly 150 million pounds, weren't they, of revenues by the end of the season, which isn't, or just short of that. And I think Celtic are expecting it to be just short of that. But that's incredible. That is, you're talking about maybe a 12th to 20th Premier League side. That's their revenues. And that's, I mean, before Celtic weren't getting anything like the 20th side in the English Premier League. Yep. So it's becoming a bit more of a leveler. And this whole new Champions League format is a game changer. And Celtic knew it could be. The growth potential is huge. And it's so important they continue to grow and qualify for the Champions League next season, because that is the type of players, and Celtic fans are going to have to get used to it as well, that they are going to be going in for. They're going to buy players for 8 million, 9 million, 10 million, maybe even more, maybe more than 11 million pounds. And it's not going to be, they're not going to be the finished article, but they are going to be of a level where they can dominate in Scotland and compete in Europe. And it's, I think with price tags are going to have to be sort of not focused on too much in terms of the players they're bringing in. Obviously it's still an interesting piece of information, and it is something you judge people on, because you can't get it right all the time, and sometimes you will maybe overspend on a player, or you'll get a bargain as well. So I mean, they're going to get a bargain with Tierney no matter what happens, because he's coming in for free. So it's like, and Jota, who they sold for 25 million, coming in for 8 million, and I think you're already seeing this is a guy who just wants to be loved and wants to play somewhere where he feels at home. And I think you're already seeing the type of performance. I think we're remembering how good a player he can be. And I'm looking forward to seeing Jota next season.
Big time. I think Jota could certainly be a player I didn't really think about too much preparing for the show today, in particular for the derby. But yeah, Jota could very much be, because I was thinking about Arne, because he has like the record signing. He's had one of these big years, but he has been progressing through the year, fulfilling that player model that you're kind of describing for us now, to get leveling up with the new Champions League format and all the kind of, the thing I always think about with football transfer fees, Anthony, like you're obviously like at the coalface with this being, right under the nose of the Premier League and everything as well. But it feels like there's always been this known thing in European football anyway, that English teams get charged more, and that kind of thing, because they've just got more money. And really, like, all the big transfer fees, it does come from big sponsorships, TV deals, competition money or whatever. And it's essentially like coupons between each of the teams. The money like comes from the TV money, and then they swap some TV money for a football player. That's kind of the way it goes. It's very rarely it's the revenue from shirt sales and season tickets and this and that really funds the transfers. It's more just like the TV companies or the sponsorships and all the stuff that goes around it, kind of just giving you like store credit to go around the transfer market, to get something off the shelf with. So as long as we are getting access to that like store credit now, as it were, then like the fees will be the fees. And it's just, because Celtic are always, we can trust them at this stage to run everything else within margin and means and everything as well, especially all the development they're doing, breaking ground and everything as well. So I would like to, coming into this game, I think Engels will be, I think this is a game that could be like his match in a way. It could be like, it's not obviously the end of the year, we'll be playing him again after the split, but this could be like a real kind of moment opportunity for someone like him. So it would be interesting to see how he does. You also mentioned Daizen Maeda playing at world-class levels, and it really does feel that if you want a poster child for improving footballer under Brendan Rodgers, then Daizen Maeda is the guy. He's been on and absolutely tore the place down this year. 26, 27 goals, I'm losing count, across all competitions. He's scoring in every competition. He's scoring vital goals. And a guy, Anthony, that has been like known previously for maybe bad technique, bad techers, and putting the odd ball into row Z. Sorry, excuse me, my nose is blocked today. But he's actually putting in some peach finishes as well. Now, that one where he stepped on to chip the keeper, Larsen-esque almost. And it really does feel now that he is almost like at like the peak of his powers, like firmly.
Yeah, he is Celtic's most important player at the moment and he is so unique. I don't think I've ever seen a footballer like him. I can't compare him to anyone in world football right now, and I can't compare him to anyone in world football previously. Off the top of my head, I can't, and it's not just off the top of my head. I've been thinking about this for quite a while. Of like, who is he like? No, he's like having a second player. It's like having 12. If Celtic have got Daizen in their squad in the starting 11, it's like having 12 players because he presses like another player. He presses like they've got an additional player. So he's so quick. He's so strong. He's just his energy is endless. It's like he's on charge constantly. His battery never runs out. So and the opposition players, especially in the Champions League and stuff, it must be like, who is this guy? What is he doing? But actually, they might not even be like, who is this guy? I think as time has gone on, they're like, this guy, we need to be careful about this guy because he's not just done. He did it at the World Cup. He scored goals at the World Cup. He's done stuff with Japan. He is. But his progression certainly this season has been incredible, and he's added that bit of technique and that finishing touch more regularly. I know he missed a few chances last week, but he has what Celtic fans really appreciated Maida's work rate and his fair share of goals, and he would score some important goals even in the past under Ange as well. But now it's becoming more regular. He's scoring a lot more goals. His technique's even better, and he's really worked on that side of his game. And he's just such a likable person. His humility, and I know a lot of the Japanese players are like that. It's very much a culture thing in terms of their humility and honesty and politeness. He just gets on with the job. He just gets down to business, sort of keeps his head down, and he seems to be really enjoying his football. But from a Celtic perspective, he is so vital. And I would say, if we're going into the summer, the three most important players Celtic need to keep are Maida, Alistair Johnston, and Carter Vickers. I know a lot of people will say, like, oh, you need to keep Kuhn. You need to, obviously, in an ideal world, you need to keep Kuhn because he's such a good player. But I feel like those three are almost irreplaceable over one window.
Yeah.
Whereas
interesting you put Vickers into that bracket. I didn't expect that to be the third name you said. That caught me.
Who were you expecting?
I thought you'd have said maybe like Kuhn or Hatate or something like that.
No, I think Celtic could live without, like, I obviously don't think Celtic would be severely weakened if they lost Kuhn and Hatate, but I think they could eventually live without them or find replacements who could become like them. But in terms of Maida, I don't think there's anyone like Maida. And then just what Alistair Johnston gives. And it's going to be great to have almost a similar player like that on the left with Tierney. And yeah, Carter Vickers, I think you notice in every game if he's missing. And over the years, he's missed Champions League games, and it's just been, you go into a Champions League game thinking, oh, there's no Carter Vickers. Well, what's it going to be like? Yeah, I felt like that actually going into the Aston Villa game. And the first 10 minutes, you're like, this could be 5 or 6 here. And then had Carter Vickers played, I'm sure it would have been a different scoreline as well.
Yeah. But yeah, so I didn't expect to hear Vickers in that top three there. I'm totally on the Vickers train. Like, he's clearly our best defender. I think it's I guess it's maybe just understated because he's got such a long contract. It doesn't really seem to get much interest. There's been a wee rumour or two here or there, but I wouldn't say anything that's kept me up at night necessarily.
I think it's probably because he does get injured a bit. He doesn't have a great injury record, and I think clubs would look at him, but he's the type of player that Celtic can afford. Maybe if they got in another centre back that you'd trust, they could rotate a bit more, and maybe not put so much of a workload on him. But yeah, I think injuries have certainly kept top clubs from bidding for Carter Vickers, and I think there was even one summer where he was out.
Yeah,
Not last
summers.
summer, the summer before, and he was out for like the whole of August, so no club was going to go in for him, were they? And yeah, this was Rodgers' first season, so Celtic signed Nat Phillips, didn't they? They had about 7 centre backs, but 4 of them were injured. So,
Of course.
yeah, that was that season. So, but you knew in a perverted way that no one's going to buy Carter Vickers this summer.
Yeah, it's on the shelf that way. And yeah, you've kind of again. So I was thinking about the Rangers game, and then when you were talking, I'm thinking, oh, should we be worried about Kuhn going? I'm getting to.
No. It's not that. Look, there's a lot of interest in Kuhn, and it's definitely come through clubs going to intermediaries and checking what his situation is. Celtic in a very strong situation with Kuhn. He's still got a very long time in his contract left. It wouldn't surprise me if they maybe want to go and improve his terms and offer him new terms in the summer. But it's there's going to be interest in him because he's been a sort of shining light. He's a good age as well for clubs to go and buy. He's done it in the Champions League. I always one of those what if moments. I feel like in my sort of football supporting life, there's a what if moment where what if Stuart Armstrong didn't cross the ball to the right against England that time when Scotland were 2-1 up, and then I'm starting to feel like that what if moment of what if Kuhn's goal had stood against Bayern Munich. What would that score line have been? Because that was like 20 seconds into the game or something, or 25 seconds. I can't remember. I think you might have seen Bayern Munich rattled for at least 20 minutes or so, and you might have scored another couple of goals. But yeah, those are those moments. Kuhn has developed really well. Another one of Rodgers who you could talk about as Rodgers has developed into a really good player, a top player. But there's going to be a lot of interest in him just because of the position he plays, the goals he scored, and sort of his age as well. So, yeah, I'm not saying he is going, but he's certainly got a lot of interest in him.
Sure. And I think like coupling that with Daizen, and we kind of stumbled into Jota a little bit earlier on, like I really feel coming into this game, or even just where the squad is at now, like, and we've had lots of different combinations of the front three, a few different names and faces have came and went over like however long you want to think about, really. But I'm not so sure the front three has been this is completely amazing, like from one side to the other, because even previously when we had Kyogo or anyone else you want to think about, Daizen Maeda wasn't always amazing as a wide player. It might have been on the right when we had Jota the first time, or after Jota left, he went to the left, and he got better, of course, and we know how he is now. But even like years gone by, he wasn't necessarily like nailed and amazing in every way. Abada was kind of hot and cold. Jota was obviously great, but did have like high ups and downs and whatever. And again, you can go back through the history books as far as you want, really. There's always seems to be like, there's one or two guys, or someone's in the ascendancy, maybe gets sold at some point. There's another guy behind them that's still developing in their footsteps almost. But right now, Jota on the left, Kuhn on the right, and Daizen through the middle. Like, I don't think it's been as good as that as an attacking department. Like for starting,
and you go into every game confident. It doesn't matter who you're playing, Bayern Munich or Leipzig or Rangers or Hibs or whatever. You go into it thinking, well, we could be 2-0 down, or we could be a goal up, or whatever, or just freshly going into the game thinking we're going to have chances, and we've got very good chances of scoring goals. We're going to create chances, and that's a really good thing to have, especially in Champions League, especially against teams like Bayern Munich, and then obviously in derby games, you're going to have players who are always going to create something, and you just Maeda, who's scored 27 goals already, has been finishing them off, and I think that is the front three they've got to go with. I think they've got to go with Kuhn, Maeda, and I think it's got to be Jota as well. So certainly to start the game. And Celtics, I think what's different, I know it was certainly talked about in terms of the difference for the Bayern Munich game, but Celtic's bench wasn't as strong or whatever. But certainly domestically, having the options domestically to put Yang on, to put Luke McCowan on, Bernardo when he's not injured, that kind of thing. It's like Celtic's bench, Ida as well. Celtic's bench is very strong. The squad is in a good shape at the moment, and like you say, that front three must be terrifying. I mean, Tavernier. I feel sorry for James Tavernier, who was thinking, "Oh yes, Daizen Maeda is now playing in a central role," and now he's got Jota, who terrorised him for a couple of years as well, who's probably going to be playing left wing.
Yeah, no rest for him in that one. And again, depending on what shapes we've seen from Barry Ferguson's Rangers so far, he might have Tavernier in at centre back, maybe even. So if he does escape Jota, he's going to be right back to seeing his old pal Daizen again. And I think like the front three are going to be really exciting to watch in this one as well, because of like being at home, everything that goes around it, like we've mentioned. And like normally when we do these types of shows before coming into the game, we do a lot of stuff talking about the different types of team that we might see Rodgers starting, but I don't think there's any position under question right now. It feels like everything's locked up in terms of who's going to start, and really then it's just about game management from Rodgers. If we bring on the cavalry of Yang, Ida, and McKibben for some reprieve or some sort of maybe tactical mix switch up later in the game, and like, you definitely need like plan Bs and to be able to change things up if you need. But realistically, for where Celtic are at right now in the game that we're trying to evolve into, you want to have like a best 11 that is like clearly like the best team that you have, to be able to just go out and throw everything at it in matches like this. And I think the front three are in great shape, and it'll be interesting to see how Rangers kind of shape up. We kind of touched on them a little bit, but do they play a 3? Do they play a 4? And there's maybe just a few wee details that the match itself may be a bit more interesting than normal, rather than just like they are still defending and counter attacking, but the shape they did against Fenerbahce, it was just a little bit different. So it's not quite as. It's still, I think Jose Mourinho had some interesting words for them after the game. Don't get me wrong, in the first leg, but it was just it's a bit more less anti-football, where it's just like 10 guys in the box. There's a bit of a structure to it. It's kind of what I'm trying to babble out here. You didn't say you were saying yourself, Anthony, you're not a score prediction guy. We do love score predictions on the channel, and with the derby coming up, I think we can maybe try and squeeze a wee exception out of you, because it is Celtic, it is a Parkhead, and there's been a few, the score lines have been very unpredictable, so no one's going to blame you if you miss it or you get it wrong. But a lot of the subscribers on the channel, they love leaving their receipts on the internet in the comments section. They love coming into the videos, leaving their receipts, leaving down their score predictions, who they think might be the first man to score, or any kind of bold man of the match shouts, who might leave their name across the match, as it were. So coming into this game, I'm often very bullish on Celtic keeping a clean sheet and really like keeping it defensively really tight. And I think like that's going to be a real strong feature of this game as well for us, is really limiting them to chances. I'm going to say we keep a clean sheet in this one to start off with right now. That's maybe a bit bold because of how they're kind of coming and how they try and attack. And when you're counter-attacking, it then ends up like 1v1s and stuff like that. And it's anyone's got a fair chance of scoring in those situations, I guess. But Kasper Schmeichel for me is the big green clean sheet machine. And I think he's going to be after it in this one in a big way. And I think we're going to win by 2-0. I think we'll just about squeeze a couple of goals out. I think we'll probably like attack, but there might be, lots of, just chances to go amiss. Maybe a wee bit of skullduggery from fouls and refereeing and whatever else might go, kind of take a wee bit of tempo out of the game here and there. But I think this will be a 2-0, and it'll be one of those ones where like we could have scored 6.
Yeah, well, this is why I don't like predictions, because my head is telling me at the moment like 4-1 Celtic, something like that. So, and I'm picturing in my head Maida getting a couple of goals, it just being like a great occasion at Celtic Park. But I could see them sneaking one on the counter attack, just the way they set up and how dangerous they can be on the counter attack. They've still got some good players, and they'll have 2,500 fans there as well. So maybe Celtic go to, like, I'm getting too detailed here. Here's me saying not predictions, but maybe like Celtic go 2 goals up, and then Rangers pull one back, and then Celtic finish them off the second half, because Celtic have got that strength and depth. And I think we've seen it, especially when you bring on Yang, McCowan, Ida. They're all hungry. They're so hungry. They just want to score goals. They just want to keep going. And it's great to have those kind of players. So Celtic could be 3-1 up and cruising, comfortable in that stage. And you bring on Yang, Ida, and McCowan, and they just want to keep going. The rest of the players are quite happy passing it about, but they're just like, pass it to one of them, and they're like, no, we're going for this again. And that's how Yang's had a few goals recently, and Ida as well. So yeah, at the moment it's Wednesday afternoon. I'm putting a timestamp on this. Talk to me on Sunday at 11:59, and I'll say I'll just take any kind of win. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I just see it. I'm picturing a day, Celtic Park in the sun, and it just being a nice victory that puts them on course to go on the brink of winning the title.
I think you've convinced me, Anthony. I'm going to go 4-0. I was going to say it was just 2-0 the first half. Just the first half was 2-0. So I'm going to say 2-0 first half, 2-0 second half. That was what I meant. You've got me. Yeah, I'm up for it. Yeah, I think it's going to be a good one. Let us know in the comment section as well down below what your score predictions will be, who you think. Any big kind of, we've kind of spoke about the whole squad, Anthony, but the last thing to just kind of leave it on is, who, not necessarily who's going to be man of the match, but, who do you think is going to be the one that writes the story of the game, as it were? Is it going to be free-scoring Daizen? Could it be somebody like Arne Engels? Might it even be Jeffrey Schlupp or Yang or somebody like this, But if you had a shout for, player of the match, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's potential for unsung heroes like Schlupp in terms of him just putting in a great performance, doing everything right, and maybe in a couple assists or something like that. But and same with Yang coming on and maybe scoring a goal. But I just can't see past Maida at the moment. He is just on such hot form. And like I said, it's so hard to describe him. And I find it so hard to describe to people who don't watch Scottish football regularly, and they want to know about Maida. They see Maida on the score sheet all the time, and even in the Champions League, and they're like, "Oh, he's good." But I'm also trying to say, well, yeah, but he doesn't just score goals. He is like the best presser you've probably ever seen. He's like having 2 players in your squad. Any team would be better with him in their squad, is what I feel at the moment in terms of the type of form that he's in. I'm not saying this that is going to always be the case, but in the type of form that he's in at the moment, any team in the world would be better with Daizen Maida in it. And I just can't see past him being such a crucial player. And he's been a crucial player for many of the derbies that he's played in, whether it's scoring at Ibrox, pressing Tavernier to block a pass and it going into the net, or intercepting a pass going past Tavernier and then dinking it past Botland. He's just a nuisance, but not just a nuisance now. He's not just a nuisance. He has found that sort of technique and finishing touch as well, and I'd be surprised if he didn't score on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I can see Daizen scoring. I can see this being his match as well. We get some funny post-match broken Japanese interviews, which I think everyone knows he's at it. Everyone knows he can do more than that, and he's toying us all on. So yeah, I can see it happening. Anthony, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thanks a lot for taking time out your busy schedule to come and preview the derby with us here. It's been a pleasure, mate. Thanks again.
No, thanks for having me on. Always great to chat to you. And yeah, let's hope for a good result on Sunday.
That's it. Win the hoops.